Good afternoon. I am calling to order our regularly scheduled meeting of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. My name is Elizabeth Glidden. I am the council member who chairs this committee, and I'm joined by council members Warsami, Fry, Council President Johnson, and Council Member Andrew Johnson, and we are a quorum of this committee. The first thing that we have on our agenda is a public hearing on the plain language charter technical amendment ordinance. And Mr. Bert Osborne from our city attorney's office is here. Welcome, and I think going to walk us through this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Bert Osborne, Assistant City Attorney, here to present on this item today. One of the ways to amend a charter in Minnesota is by way of a unanimous vote of the City Council. They call it amendment by ordinance, but it's an amendment of the charter. If all 13 council members vote to amend the charter and the mayor agrees, then the charter is amended. That process starts by the Charter Commission recommending such a process and a proposed amendment. And at their September 7th, 2016 meeting, the Charter Commission did pass a slate of technical amendments to the charter and forwarded them to the City Council for notice and a public hearing, which is what we're here to do today, and then for the council to take a vote. I understand procedurally we're within the timeframes required by the statute. So if there's no initial questions, Madam Chair, I'll just start walking you all through the each technical amendment.
I think that's perfect.
I don't know if that's going to come up for the public to see. It's not great, but the first proposed technical amendment to the charter is to the redistricting section. And the proposal is to take out some specific dates on when redistricting should occur and just get it in line with state law. Peter Ginder, Deputy City Attorney Peter Ginder, who's retired now, he got out his stack of future calendars and figured out in years here and there, this provision could trigger redistricting happening, a full year after we would want it to in some instances. So all this would do is make the commission would adopt a ward boundary plan as the Minnesota election law provides. And it's just, that way we'll always be consistent with state law. Madam Chair, would you like me to entertain questions after each?
I think, why don't you just assume I will let you know if there's questions.
Sounds good.
So I think that'll just have us go smoother. You don't need to ask me. I'll let you know.
The next proposed technical amendment to the charter would be to, again, remove a pretty specific time frame for an effective date regarding dividing a ward into precincts or designated a polling place, and it would just amend the charter to remove that specific time frame and again provide that would happen as Minnesota election law provides. The next proposed amendment would be to amend the provisions of the city charter regarding council vacancies. And this was one of the interesting ones, I think. About 400 of us missed this. In the old charter, it provided for a process to fill a vacant council seat that occurred before March 1st, and then it provided a different process to fill that seat if the vacancy occurred on or after March 1st. In the plain language revision, we did not include what happens on March 1st, and so we're adding that back into the charter to just make sure we're covered for that process whenever it occurs. We've also, the Charter Commission has recommended that the council must schedule a special election filling a vacancy held within, instead of 75 days, 90 days after the vacancy occurs, and that was just to make it consistent with the same time frame should there be a vacancy in the mayor's office. The next recommended technical correction pertains to the legal requirement of publication of ordinances in an official newspaper. This would provide for, at the direction of the City Council, that publication may be accomplished by publishing only the title and a summary of the ordinance or resolution. The thought was that if a particularly lengthy rewrite, again, maybe technical rewrites of ordinances took place, this would obviate the need to publish every single word to notify the public. And in this day and age, the entirety of the what's being proposed to be amended would be immediately linked in a way the public could access it anyway. And again, this would only ever occur if the City Council ordered it. This next proposed technical amendment to the charter would be merely adding back into the powers of the Board of Estimate and Taxation to elect other officers from its members as it deems necessary, and for the Board of Estimate and Taxation to adopt rules of order for the conduct of its own business. Those were because of the various revisions that took place in the plain language effort. Originally, all of the boards and commissions would have been addressed in one section of the charter, but for various reasons, some were pulled back out and given their own section in the charter. But the powers that were referenced applying to all boards and commissions were left out. And so this would just be adding back in those specific powers. And I would note that the powers to do those things were in our old charter as well. This would also, clarify that the board, as used in provision A4, is referring to the Park and Recreation Board, because this section, when we refer to a board, it would be referring to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. The next technical correction, Madam Chair and members of the committee, would be to, again, relating to the powers of the Park and Recreation Board. It would, again, give the Park Board a power to merely publish an ordinance in summary form, and that would be legally effective as if the entire ordinance was published. I think this is Chair Clegg's favorite proposed amendment to the charter. It would just be adding a comma. As you can see on your materials, it would be adding a comma after, and in this section, it pertains to, I believe, the Civil Service Commission. And it says each officer, comma, other than a member of a board, comma, commission, comma, or committee. And the proposal would be to add a comma after committee, so the following language would apply to boards, commissions, and committees who is not otherwise classified as an employee. It also would just conform to the punctuation style that was used for the plain language revision. The next proposed amendment to the charter recommended by the Charter Commission would be pertaining to the oath of council members, and this was born out of the differing terms of the police chief, which is a 3-year term, and other department heads, which charter department heads, which are on 2-year terms, and it just would provide when those oaths would take place to conform with actually when those folks took office and were appointed. The next proposed technical correction would be to remove the notice provisions currently in the charter altogether, and to either relegate any notice provisions that the city would want to ordinance, or more likely just to make sure that all of that conforms with state law. The next proposed corrections would be largely just a numbering error. Again, only about 400 of us missed that. Changing the numeration of certain sections of the charter from Arabic to Romanettes. And that would just be consistent with the way the other sections of the charter are numbered. The final few proposed technical correction would pertain to, at bond council's recommendation, that the section on appropriations that currently reads, except as this section 9.2 otherwise provides, no money may be paid out of the city's treasury except in payment of principal or interest on a bond issued or other debt occurred under this charter or other law, just in recognition of the fact that sometimes financing will take place pursuant to perhaps a piece of special legislation. And the next proposed technical correction, Madam Chair, members of the committee, would be to again remove a specific date from a section of the charter regarding taxation timing, and just make that conform to the time set by the general law of Minnesota. Then the next recommended amendment to the charter would be relating to, again, financing and debt. And it would change borrowing power terms to, right now it reads to, the city council may issue bonds, borrow money, or otherwise pledge its credit only for a lawful purpose consistent with this charter and with the concurrence of the city council, the Board of Estimate and Taxation. And then there was a provision that said any other board in which this charter vests the borrowing power. I think this technical correction pertains to, we changed it to just the Park and Recreation Board, because I think that's the only other entity with such power. And finally, there is the final recommendation is that a term be added to the charter under its debt provisions, reading, when issuing bonds, the city may proceed under this charter, section 9.4, or under this section 9.4, or under any other applicable law. And again, that's a recognition that when issuing bonds, that may be done pursuant to a special law of some sort. So that is the slate of technical corrections, Madam Chair, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Osborne, thank you for walking us through these somewhat unexciting, perhaps, as they are technical but important amendments to make sure that the charter is working right. I'm not seeing questions, so I will go ahead and I will open the public hearing so we can see if anybody would like to speak. I'll just note Barry Clegg, who is serving as the chair of our Charter Commission, who I'm sure has carefully ushered this process through, working with the city attorney and clerk's offices, and is here. And I don't know if you wanted to say anything, or else just for us to acknowledge that the Charter Commission played an important role in this work.
Thank you, Vice President Glidden and council members. I would just say that this process started even before the vote had been taken on the plain language charter. Both the city attorney had a list and the Charter Commission had a list, and I'm pleased to say that over 3 years, this is the list, and it's pretty short and it's pretty inconsequential. So I think that speaks well of the process that we went through. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll ask if there is anyone else who would like to speak. I'm not seeing anyone, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I will move approval of the ordinance amending the Minneapolis City Charter as described by Mr. Osborne and on our agendas in front of us. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that item is approved. Thank you so much. Next, we have a consent item, or two consent items. The first is item number 2 on our agenda. It is a contract with Frederickson and Byron for state legislative services, and this would be receiving and filing the ethics officer's report relating to conflict of interest and authorizing a contract not to exceed $48,000 with Frederickson and Byron for state legislative presentation services from January through December of 2017. The second item, which is number 3 on the agenda, is a contract with Franz and Moore Government Relations for state legislative services. And as with the other one, it's filing the ethics report relating to conflict of interest and authorizing a contract not to exceed $40,000 for 2017. And I will move items 2 and 3 on our agenda. Discussion on either? Not seeing any, so all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, and those items are approved. And finally, we have our one discussion item. It is really the synopsis of our work on the larger policy positions document, and this would be adoption of the 2017 legislative agenda. Ms. Bergman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. Sasha Bergman with the IGR Department. If it's okay with you, I'll just walk through the document online titled 2017 Legislative Agenda, kind of walk through some of the main changes from the last year, and then we would be open to questions. The first item listed on the agenda is advancing racial equity. This is something that was a component of last year's agenda. We did update the statement in the policy positions, and that statement is reflected here. Under local government finance, the 3 items, local government aid, direct property tax relief, and pension funding, remain largely unchanged from last year. In the capital investment section, we did move a statement about support for the 35 and Lake Transit Access Project from the transportation section to the top of the capital investment section to reflect that as our top bonding priority. The other 3 bonding projects remain in the same as last year, or as described in last year's document, the 10th Avenue Bridge rehabilitation, the Emergency Operations and Training Facility expansion, and then the Pioneers and Soldiers Cemetery fence restoration. And then there is an added statement just near the bottom about supporting investments of at least $200 million for statewide bridge replacement and rehabilitation. On the second page, under the transportation section, there's kind of 3 statements. Again, the 35 and Lake Transit Access Project was moved to the bonding section, but really the transportation items remain the same as they were last year. The municipal governance section, contains a statement regarding local control and the need to maintain local government decision-making authority, and that was also in the agenda last year. It was added in the middle of session. And then we did add a statement, or recommend adding a statement to the legislative agenda regarding regional governance, really to support the Met Council and the role that they have traditionally played in regional planning on a number of fronts in the metro area. The public safety and criminal justice reform section has a new statement. The first statement there really, I think, reflects some of the 21st century policing policies that were adopted in the policy position document at the last IGR committee meeting. The driver diversion program statement was there previously, as was the criminal background checks for gun sales. But at the end of the public safety and criminal justice reform section, we recommend adding support for legislation allowing for a separate criminal contempt of court charge for a willful violation of a geographic restriction. And that, as you would recall, is one of the items that the city attorney's office brought forward through the last process. New to this short list, for this session, we recommend adding 2 new sections. They're not, of course, new to the city's work, but they would be pulling from the larger policy position document, and that's regarding affordable housing and really making a statement in our legislative agenda of our support for investments in affordable housing efforts. And a statement regarding city livability and community well-being, and that's really to reflect our support for efforts to build economic security, whatever policy initiatives those may be, as well as promoting public health. Since our city is one of the only community health boards in the state, we really have a unique voice as it relates to municipal voices on the public health front at the Capitol. A lot of other counties or organizations of multiple counties are the public health functions throughout the state, but we are unique in that regard and do a lot of work on public health at the Capitol, and so wanted to recommend adding a statement to reflect that. And then finally, at the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3, I don't think made any changes or recommend any changes to the jobs and workforce development section. And with that, I think any of us would be happy to answer questions about the recommended 2017 legislative agenda.
Thank you very much. And I'll just note that this is really the culmination of a large amount of work, having a good handle on watching how issues have progressed at the legislature and our anticipation of changes due to the election results, and then keeping an eye on what are the needs of the city. So I just want to say thank you very much to you and the team that helped you on that. I am not seeing questions from council members, so I think we're just ready to vote. And so I will move approval of this item. Discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that item is approved. Finally, we have our standing item on updates from our various levels of government. Mr. Ranieri, is there something you'd like to report?
Yes, Madam Chair. There are a couple items. Tomorrow is an important day to start, even though the legislative session doesn't start till January 3rd. Tomorrow is very important. It's going to lay some groundwork for the session. The economic forecast, or the financial revenue forecast, is due to be released tomorrow morning. We have no predictions, but over the last couple of months, the revenue has dropped a little bit, 2% below expectation. We will see tomorrow, and that will really set the stage for some activities for the session. Then again, in February, March, there will be another forecast which will really lay out for the budgeting process for the appropriation process for the legislature. Also, there have been some committee assignments in both the House and the Senate. Chairs have been named. A committee membership has not yet been named. We expect that to be before the first of the year. In terms of the governor's budget, he is meeting with state departments, putting together a budget. Nothing to report yet, but we imagine within the next month. He needs to have his budget to the legislature by the end of January. The League of Cities, I think, will be adopting their policies in a week or a couple weeks. Metro cities adopted theirs yesterday, and we are basically in alignment with them. And then another issue that's still out there, and we're not certain what will happen, is the whole issue of healthcare, MNsure here in Minnesota. There has been talk of possibility of a special session, but we have seen no discussions yet between the governor and legislative leadership. So at this time, we don't see a special session in December.
All right.
And Madam Chair, in early January, hopefully we can give some sort of report on what's happening at the federal level maybe there'll be a little bit more firmness.
Okay, I hope so. All right, thank you very much. And I'm not seeing any questions from committee members. So with that, I believe we have taken care of our business on our agenda for today, and we are adjourned. Thanks.